Welcome to the next episode of our podcast, where we have the pleasure of introducing our one and only Aditya, a certified coach who has helped over hundreds of tech professionals and leaders master their communication skills. And he's actually an international award-winning speaker, captivating audiences of over 50 stages worldwide. It's actually Aditya's journey from being labeled to achieving greatness that's what truly sets him apart. So join us as we uncover this inspiring story of overcoming adversity, finding authenticity, and empowering others to do the same. Get ready to be inspired by our very own Aditya, the coach, speaker, and advocate for authentic living. All right, welcome everyone. I'm super excited to have Aditya today, who is an incredible coach. He's in the technology industry. He has done a lot of work behind the scenes, becoming a software engineer, along with leading and coaching so many different individuals, especially in tech. So I'd love to learn more about you, Aditya, because the interesting piece is that you start off in a journey where tech seems like this really awesome space to grow and develop, especially since it's really fast paced. But then you also start to consider your own self-development journey in the fact that you want to do more for yourself. I would love to know more about you. And if you can just give us an opening on who you are and why are you coaching today?
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity, Anam. So yes, I started off as an engineer, and that was coming from my background as an Indian, right? My parents knew before I was born that I was going to be an engineer, so there were no choices provided. Throughout my childhood, though, I did not feel like I excelled at engineering. I was doing okay. I was average. And being average is not super fun, right? You're not at the top of your game. There's always someone better than you, and you're behind. You're trying to catch up. You're playing the catch-up game. So that was my childhood, and I eventually decided to come to America to have a better life, and I joined an average school, got an average job. So it was all about being average. So at some point, after 6 to 7 years of my experience in tech, I was like, there's more to life. I want to do better things. I knew I wanted to do something to do with people. And that's when I felt a little bit of frustration because I couldn't get ahead in my career. Because getting ahead in your in tech space is all about your logic. You have to be very strong technically, and those are the people who typically get promoted to the next level. Right? So I kind of felt stuck because I never felt, this is my lane. And I sought after coaching, I decided to work with a coach to get some clarity for myself. And that's when I was able to understand myself at a deeper level. I was go deep into understanding what makes people tick. Should I just get an MBA? Should I, I've realized that we often fall into those traps of like gaining more knowledge, more degrees. What coaching really gave me is deep. Instead of more, how can we go deep into understanding ourselves and finding something that is true within us? And that's when I've realized I want to be able to speak and work with people more often. I decided to pursue coach training and become a certified coach myself. And since that time, because I had a unique niche where I come from tech and I coach tech professionals and tech leaders, many opportunities came my way. Over the past many years, I've coached over 150 tech professionals and tech leaders, and that's what I continue to do today.
Well, that's beautiful. So I'm gonna rephrase it in my own words, but feel free to let me know if I've caught everything. So essentially, you immigrated from India, and you already had this upbringing that tech is the way, and that's where you're gonna go and go into because everyone around you is kind of doing that, and it's just something that maybe would help you with your future, and that's just like something again a lot of parents maybe want for their kids. So you weren't necessarily passionate about it, but you knew that this is something you could start in. And would you say that you had this desire to maybe do something different before you thought about going into tech industry, or um, did you just not know exactly what you wanted to do first, but then just kind of went into tech and then allowed yourself to learn and evolve from there?
Yeah, good question. So there was no choice available. It's like the only thing I knew was to be in tech. So, yeah.
Okay, so you had no choice, and was this coming from your parents, or was this just something you
Society,
thought by yourself?
parents, society, yes, everyone who comes from my place, especially in southern part of India, they're all engineers. If you
Mm,
notice any, most likely, people say you can't generalize people, but you can generalize people. If you see an Indian and the States, most likely they are working in tech.
got it. So it was kind of almost like inevitable in terms of that experience. Um, but then isn't there also another side to being like a part of the Indian culture that you're constantly working yourself, like mindset, or maybe the meditation piece of things and tapping into your well-being? Like, did you also maybe explore that area as well to help influence that journey for yourself? Like, how did you kind of say, this seems like an average space for me in tech, but being in personal self-development and coaching seems like the way to go?
Great question. I think those are two different things. One is, hey, in India, there are a lot of meditation, yoga, spirituality things. Another question from that is, how did I decide to go into coaching? I think those are two different things. I'll just first answer the first question, which is, spirituality and how does that relate to tech, right? I get this question very often. Right? Hey, there's so many meditation, so on in India, and there's also so much tech. Unfortunately, for most people, the meditation aspect, we are aware of it, but we never, I don't think as a growing up, as a child or even as an adult in India, I never understood the depth of spirituality. I'm like, you meditate, yes. You say a mantra, but we didn't understand the depth of spirituality growing up. So we were primarily driven by engineering, need to become an engineer so we can survive in the world. So those were really two different pieces. So I think, again, I don't know the best way to answer this question, and I still get confused. Like, yes, there are so many the yoga meditation, but I don't think Indians themselves, most of us, haven't gone through the depths of it growing up, right? And we are learning about our own culture, where that came from after having awareness, and we are being taught from the Western world the depth of something India produced. So, which is always an interesting thing. I know I did not answer that question because I have no idea how that happened.
No worries. Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask, just because like um just because our culture definitely influenced the way that we see ourselves and perceive ourselves at times, especially as a child, because your world is constantly influenced by whoever you surround yourself with. And in some ways, you didn't really know who you were, but you trusted your parents, or the people that you model after, right? Like who you aspire to be, and then you're like, that seems really interesting, and I really love that, and there's something about it. Then you go into that direction. But then there are other cases where it's just like you were saying, there's the social pressures, like this is just who you're gonna be, and this is how you're gonna be, and there's like no real exploration. It's just expected. So maybe in your case, it sounds to me like spirituality was not something you necessarily practiced, but you knew about, and or not necessarily practice as much, or what you knew about, and then my guess is it can still allow you to relate to other people who, as you were saying, who kind of are familiar with that background, but maybe they don't also practice it as much.
Exactly. True. So the second part of your question was, how did I get into coaching, right? So I think that was just a fluke, to be honest. I did not decide, oh, I want to become a coach. I was an accidental coach, because I was trying to get help myself. Being in tech and wanting to see what my full potential is. Where are my skill sets are? Why am I not getting the results I want, even though I'm putting on all the efforts. And so I really enjoyed, I really got tremendous benefits from working with the coach that I decided to become a coach for myself. So, yeah.
That's powerful. So I'm trying to understand too, like if you're gonna work with people in, you know, tech, I'm sure they're coming from all various different challenges and backgrounds and experiences and even generation. Um, what are some of the trends you've noticed in regards to some of the people that you're working with? Let's say someone who's young, just got out of college, and are hopping into the tech industry. Do you mostly work with individuals like that? Do you mostly work with people who are, mid-senior level or CEOs? And what are some of the things that you're finding people to kind of like struggle with the most?
Yeah. So most of the times, the majority of people I work with are either at the senior levels in their engineering career, maybe 7 to 15 years in their career, or they're tech leaders in the companies. The common pattern that they struggle with is they've been focusing on very external things. What I mean by that is getting that next certification, getting that next MBA degree. That's what we've been trained to do: get more degrees, get more certifications, gain more knowledge. But what we don't look at is why we do things a certain way, what makes us tick, what's behind the surface, what are we getting by getting an MBA, what are we getting by getting a more certification, where are we going. So going deep is not something we are trained to do. No one asks themselves, what's the purpose of doing something certain thing? We just do it because that's what everyone does. So that's the main challenge. So because of just doing more and working more things, working more hours, it often doesn't necessarily translate to more success or getting a promotion. And that's the tipping point where people get frustrated. Why am I not getting results even though? And that's when they typically sort of come to me for coaching, either proactively by themselves. Sometimes I work directly with companies and they're like, these tech leaders are, they're newly promoted managers, or they have been managers for a while, but they are pissing off their direct reports, they're pissing off their leaders, they're causing so much troubles. So they're like, you have to work with a coach, right? So those are the two different ways. Either the companies hire me as their coach, or the individuals get, experience certain level of dissatisfaction in their role and they come to me.
Yeah, so many questions there actually.
Absolutely.
Is that's really interesting because um even in other careers or industry, we're always trying to strive and do more. I don't know if you work with mostly just people in America only. Is this the trend where people are constantly trying to get degrees and prove to other people or prove to themselves that they are capable? Or um, is it just something that, even the culture within the industry is kind of reminding and reinforcing that they need to kind of do this work?
Yeah, good question. I think it's just the culture of the corporate industry. No matter where you are, I believe I mostly work probably 100% of my clients are within the United States. They are from different cultural backgrounds. Some are Indian, some are American, some are from other countries all across the world. But I think the pattern is pretty much similar. They're like just focused on the very external things, of doing more, getting more degrees, and telling more stories and so on, but they often lack the depth of going deep into themselves. Like, what is that motivates from me from inside? Understanding other people at a deeper level. What is that motivates the other person at a deeper level?
That's interesting. And when they learn more about themselves, what are their typical next steps? Is it mostly working within their corporate environment and coming up with a plan with their manager, for example, or leader? Or is it more of like, hey, maybe this is something I'm striving, but not suitable for me, and maybe it's another career route for me? What have you seen or noticed?
Great question, right? So let me just give statement.
If you can give an
Example.
example, that'd be really awesome. Yeah.
So that way it will be a little more concrete. Um, so this is a very common use case, right? One um, particular leader, I started working with this particular leader who had challenges working with mainly with his counterparts and his own leaders, is a senior leadership team. And the challenge with this gentleman is, he would get frustrated pretty often, pretty quickly when he was asked questions, or when he was, when he has to have difficult conversations. Because at a senior level leadership, it's all about getting buy-in from other counterparts, getting buy-in from leaders, selling your ideas, and so on. And there are many difficult conversations to have on a certain topic because everyone is coming with different viewpoints. So how do you influence them? So in those difficult conversations, this gentleman is having challenges, right? So this is a very common theme that I notice in tech individuals. So for some people, it is frustration. For some people, not being able to say anything, not being able to say what they want to say. So it varies for different individuals. But the common theme is, when it comes to a difficult conversations, they have challenges. And the way I typically work with them is to, just going deep into within themselves. What is that? What is that I want to communicate? And what is that causing frustration when I wanted to communicate? Or sometimes what is that causing fear when I wanted to communicate? So going deep into ourselves and having an understanding and awareness of what it is, that's really the foundation for the next step, which is to actually say what needs to be said in a way that is respectful to others. This first step of understanding, going deep, is something like 90% of the people don't even go there. It's about, they say something, other person might object their perspective. That's when they come to a judgment that, oh, this person they label the person as a jerk, so I can't say this with him, and they move on, right? And they repeat this pattern over several years, and this never goes away, because all these conversations are being held at a very superficial level. I said this person said this, so he must be a jerk. I said this, the person rejected, so I can't say this again. That's like a very surface level, and that's where most people stay. So going deep and having self-awareness helps us really understand what's going on from deep inside. That would be the first step. And after that, more influence strategies. Once they understand that, we see, I don't want to go super scientific, but let me pause right there.
Yeah, that sounds so interesting. And it just sounds like maybe it's an individual thing, like the struggles, but you said it was a common theme. So I was a bit surprised to hear that there are some people in leadership roles who are just like not speaking up or sharing their thoughts, or when they share it, you're saying that it's like kind of superficial, which means that maybe there could be some personal development, HR work there to help people connect deeper, right? Because especially in the tech field industry, sometimes one is going so rapidly with all these different projects, demands, timelines, things like that. Then there's also huge teams, and you're constantly having to meet and talk to so many different individuals to, constantly having to learn. And the question here is like, how do people build time to make those connections? What are some ways you could suggest for someone who is in tech and looking to up their communication skills so that they could build a better relationship or experience in their company?
Yeah, great question. So 100% I agree with your point that, it's all about building relationships if you want to, survive and thrive in leadership roles, right? And how do you go about doing that? So the first thing, one of the things we do in what exercises is like a relationship, identifying the decision makers, sponsors in the company who can speak on our behalf when we're not in the group, being able to build those relationships with strategic relationships with decision makers. That's one of the things I often work on with many of the leaders, right? And this exercise itself was, it's a very new exercise for many of them because they never intentionally try to build relationships. It's all about getting more things done, using people for their skills and so on. So, so the idea of asking someone for a coffee chat is something simple anyone can do. Send a message to them saying that, hey, I want to get to know about you outside of work scenario. Would you be open for a 15-minute coffee chat? Many companies often have networking events. You can go attend those networking events and ask people for a coffee chat just to know about them. During those coffee chats, you're not necessarily talking about work, although you can, to understand what their line of business is. But more importantly, you want to talk about what are the things that excite them, what are the things that they're passionate about. Being able to understand the person at a deeper level than at a superficial level. And this is one of the keys when I keep talking about, people lack the depth. When I send an email and someone responds or doesn't respond, I quickly interpret it as, oh, this person is not interested in me. Then maybe that person is busy with 1,000 other things. Maybe I'm asking them to do something they're not passionate about. But when I get to connect with the person at a deeper level and get to know the person, I know I'm trying to understand what motivates the other person. That way, I can ask for things in a way that motivates them, in a way that makes them want to do it. Right? So that's one of the, I know I said a lot, you said a few things, but I gave you a list of things that they can do. But ultimately, it boils down to asking someone for a chat and trying to understand the other person at a deeper level.
Yeah, no, what you said is great. Don't feel like it's a lot. It's actually enough. And it's really great thoughts there because sometimes we are so quote unquote busy at work. We kind of say, oh, those one-on-one chats, too much time. I don't want to have time, blah, blah, or make all these different excuses, But the fact that what you're saying is like, no, it's actually very valuable to have these connections and build rapport outside of work and outside the context of work, because that's where you get to know the person as an individual and not necessarily according to the frustration, the pain points of going through the project, So as you were saying that, I was also thinking along the lens of what you're mentioning a lot of times is around empathy, getting to know the person deeply, and really hearing where they're coming from. So once these individuals are working with you, developing some work on empathizing and learn about themselves along with the other person in front of them, what are some transformational experiences have you witnessed or heard back as feedback?
Yeah, great question. So the fact that people get introduced about, oh, there's something else you can do besides just doing more projects and having more superficial conversations, it's this idea that you can understand what you want at a deeper level. There's also this idea that you can understand what the other person wants at a deeper level. That in itself is a game-changing insight for many people, right? So they do this, right? They try to understand themselves at the deeper level so they can communicate what they want very effectively. Similarly, once they understand the other person at a deeper level, they can communicate what the other person wants and phrase it in a way that appeals to the other person's interest. So going back to the example of this leader I was working with, who was having troubles communicating down, across, and up, when he started having awareness about what is happening with him at a deeper level, which is that he doesn't feel heard, or so he wants to show his authority over others. When he understood that, he realized he doesn't have to prove himself as an authority. He doesn't. Instead, as soon as he recognized that it's not a conversation about my self-worth, the whole dynamics changed. He started being more calmer. So he was not being aggressive in those discussion. The second thing is empathy that you spoke about, understanding the other person at a deeper level. So once he was able to calm himself down and have rational conversations, he started also writing a list of things that the other person is passionate about. He started having these conversations, getting to know people at a deeper level. So now he started finding projects that the other person is more interested in. And that way he got more buy-ins. He was able to listen more, ask more questions that helps him understand other people instead of just telling them things. Over the period of 6 months, his bosses recognized the changes he made. And eventually, when he was frustrated that he was being passed for promotions, when there was an opportunity, he got double promoted. By making these minor changes in how he communicates, his entire career trajectory shifted very quickly.
Wow, that is such a powerful revolution on his side to becoming more empathetic, more of a listener instead of someone who's imposing on other people and trying to speak his mind all the time, or someone who feels like they need to prove themselves and to other people. That sounds to me like he did a lot of inner work, instead of the other, like you were saying before, which is trying to look for approval or getting certification from the outside external sources. In this case, he's looking at the validation of like his worth, his strengths, his ability, and then constantly working on, would you say it's more of his strengths or more of his weaknesses?
More of his strengths. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, that's powerful. Yeah, because I think sometimes when we are in a place of trying to quote unquote prove ourselves, we're tempted to almost like bring ourselves down and focus on the weaknesses. How would you tell someone who's constantly having that internal struggle to work on themselves, or maybe break it down in such a way that they can either alleviate or step into a growth mindset?
Yeah, great question. This is one of the challenges with coaching somebody, because they're always looking at what they can do. They're always looking at how the glass is half empty. So it's hard. You can't. That's where I mean, as you know, you've been into coaching and personal development. It's hard to tell somebody, hey, dude, stop looking at the glass is half empty. It's easy to say that, but it's hard for them to register it. So the way we do it as coaches, the way we are trained it as coaches, you don't tell them, you show them, right? So we will initially, when we start in the coaching sessions, we will go with the client's agenda. The client says, all right, this glass is half empty. Right, you're right. The glass is half empty. How is that working out for you? Oh, it's causing me frustration, stress. I don't want to go to work. I don't want to do the project. Great. Want to try something different. So maybe the client will be hesitant, maybe not. But the idea behind the way we coach others is to help them notice the pattern. Because if they are having this perspective around the glass being half empty, it's going to show up in multiple different ways in their personal career, personal life, career, relationships. It's going to show up everywhere. So the way we help them identify is work with them for like a period of 3 months. Sometimes it takes time to help them see the whole picture. And we notice that we are getting blocked at the same point in every different direction. And that's when the light bulb goes off for the client. Typically, they realize, oh my God, this is happening everywhere. I'm being hard towards my manager. I'm being hard towards my direct reports. I'm being hard towards my girlfriend or spouse. That's when the light bulb goes off, and they start wanting to change that perspective. And we, it's a little bit frustrating in the beginning for both the client, especially for the client, because they feel like they're not getting there. But as a coach, we have to be patient with that. And that's why when I work with clients, I say minimum of so many sessions, because it takes time for people to discover it for themselves. And it's a way more powerful thing than me telling them what they're behind on.
Awesome. Yeah. To summarize, it was to um, look at what's already working, what's not working, and see some of those patterns or trends in your life, and start making decisions to move towards changing those, trends or patterns.
100%.
Awesome. So I think that makes a lot of sense, actually. And I know that you're constantly trying to listen to other people and help them articulate their situation for themselves so that they can learn how to almost unfold and problem solve on their own. And essentially, you're giving them some strategies or tools to look at it differently. And as you were saying, being super patient, because sometimes everyone's in a different pace and journey and experience. So the way they are able to tackle those scenarios may take more time as compared to someone else. I'm curious about you. I'm curious about you because we talked so much about other people and like how you support them. You said so many great ways of using strategies and tools and breaking it down for people. What were some of the biggest pain points? And maybe take us back to a time or an experience where you just went through a really difficult situation, and how did you go about resolving it for yourself?
Oh, I don't have any pain points. I was perfect from day. I'm just kidding. Of course, I had to go through a lot of it myself. I think for me, the biggest pain point, I think I'll start with the one when I felt stuck in my career. I was doing a lot. I was doing the same thing again and again, which is producing more ideas for my manager, or getting more certifications and working harder, trying to go above and beyond what I think I should do. But I was not getting anywhere. Right? I was not getting the kind of visibility I wanted. I was not getting the promotions I wanted. So that was a really hard time. I wanted to answer for that, because especially when you're working so hard, you have a lot of great ideas, you think you have contributed more, but then the results are not coming. That would be the most challenging part. So like I said before, I think the coaching helped me give those perspective, give me that perspective of going deep into understanding what my challenges were. My challenges were that I think I was just being in my own head about what I think I should do. I was not talking to more people. I was not trying to understand. One of the things you want to understand in a company is reading behind the words that people say. How does promotions work in your company? Who is responsible for promotions? Reading the understanding the unspoken language of promotions. So that requires relationship building. That requires you to talk to stakeholders who are responsible for making those decisions. So instead, people just stay in their head, right? And that's 90% of the times, one of the biggest challenges. So I went through that challenge myself. But once I started developing relationships, once I started discovering what I want to be in a place where I can help others. I want to be in more of a leadership roles. And once I started having those awareness, I realized I'm not in the right spot in the first place. It's like many times people struggle because they're just not in the right spot. It's nothing to do with their skill set. It's nothing to do with how hard they're working. It's almost like a fish trying to climb a tree. It cannot happen, right? If you're a fish trying to climb a tree, you need to find the right ocean for you to be able to swim well. And many times that might be the solution. That when I realized that, I found something else which is more in line with what I want.
Wow. Okay. So that's a really great way of explaining and articulating about how sometimes you're just maybe not in the right environment or space. So in that case, you gotta start allowing yourself to focus on, as you were saying before, your strengths, and then finding out what actually will give you that alignment. And for someone, let's say, is going into tech, and they want to get promoted, right? And they think that that's what they want. How do you know if that's exactly what they want, or is it more of like they're trying to, like you were saying, they're a fish, but they're in the wrong environment?
Yeah, great question. And that happens a lot, right? As a coach, if they're coming to coaching, and many people might not come for coaching because they strongly believe that all they need is the next promotion and all they need is certification. All they need is, and if that works out for you, great, right? If that, and so many people doesn't want to find out what they want. And when I have sometimes get on those discovery calls with my clients, I knew that they are not the right fit, in which case I will tell them that maybe coaching is not the right fit for them. But if they're talking to me, that means they want to understand, like you said, they're curious about, um, you know, there is some dissatisfaction. They're questioning with their strategy. In those cases, I'd just be curious and find out, what does getting a promotion give them? Is it more money? Is it more reputation? What is that it gives them? Uh, so as we go deeper, again, like I said, it's all about understanding ourselves at a deeper level. Typically, it boils down to some core values. Its core values could be, feeling in. For me, it is about being able to connect with people, being able to help others, being able to be part of a mission that helps a community. These are some things I am passionate about, and usually takes time to dig deeper into themselves. So that's the direction I typically take them in. And the beauty about this process is that you're not just experimenting. You're not just, once you get to that point where you can really understand your core values, everything that you do gives you a lot of fulfillment typically. And when you have a lot of fulfillment and you enjoy the things you do, money comes your way. You don't have to try so hard for the external factors.
Core values. How do we know our core values, especially if we've been told by culture, by society, this is who you are, is what you do? How do you uncover that? How do you know what's yours and what's not?
Great question. And core values are two different types, right? One is coming from a fear-based place, and this fear-based place are the ones which are coming from society, and where people are telling you. So when you say, it's interesting you mentioned that, because many times when I do this core values exercise with my clients, they're like, oh, accomplishment is my core value, and safety, wanting that financial safety is my core value. And when we go dig deeper into that, where that is coming from, it's often not their core value. Again, it's a process of just going deeper, right? Through as you know, it's coaching is a lot of asking questions, asking the right questions, which can unlock you the answers. And that's where the skill of a coach is being able to do that in a very graceful way. So by digging deeper, typically we identify what are those values that are coming from a place of fear and validation, and what are our true values that gives us joy. We want to do this not because my mom told it or my society expects me to. I want to do this because it brings me fun. And as we go deeper into uncovering our past experiences where we felt the most joy, those are the times when by reflecting on our previous experiences and so on is how we arrive at those core values which are ours and which are not ours.
Yeah, I actually love what you said, that you do need time to process, and it almost sounds like you need to carve out that time, because it is a good priority to create, especially if you're trying to shift either your mentality, certain areas within your life, maybe create new experiences. So, and I'm thinking that sometimes you can't do it by yourself, where you do need the right key people or key environment to help you remove yourself from certain mental models. So like, so let's say, for example, if you're going to talk to your parents, they're probably going to say the same thing, right? Versus like someone like either a life coach or technical coach like yourself, or maybe like a friend who's just really empathetic and can understand and like hear you, and they've grown up with you, and they can see some of those changes and shifts. I really appreciate your share of your story, because I think it's really valuable to know that we can actually work on ourselves, and we just need to respect where we are in our journey to get to where we want to be. So I know technology nowadays are changing. There's a lot of shifts in people going from, like teaching or maybe in retail or whatever, and they're looking to transition into technology because it may be more accommodating to their family needs or their situation, or they just maybe want to grow and learn more. What would you say to someone who's new to the industry? What are some skills or maybe areas of focus that they could look into to either start off or continue working on in order to build a strong either portfolio or set of experiences for themselves when they're looking to transition?
Great question. I mean, with ChatGPT, this is one of my favorite questions, right? With ChatGPT and AI, it's changing the landscape by a huge margin. Previously, until before ChatGPT, it's all about learning to write the best algorithms and data structures, which are foundational to have a career in tech. And that's where many of the coding boot camps became hugely popular in on training people on these coding skills. With ChatGPT, what it is quickly doing is it's replacing the logical piece of our brain. Take the most complex coding problem that you can ever find. ChatGPT will solve it in 10 minutes when it can take a really good developer a few hours, someone like me a couple of days to solve the same problem. So the efficiency has gone so much. So it brings both opportunities as well as risks. Risks are that if you, let's start with opportunities. Opportunities are where if it's someone new who's getting into tech, it's easier because all the most complex concepts which took someone weeks to understand, now you can understand easily by asking ChatGPT to explain what that complex concept is. Like you are a 10-year-old, it will do a great job. So that's an opportunity you can leverage to quickly get into tech. But the risks are, if you stay in the logical portion of the tech where you're only focused on how to solve great coding problems, I don't think your career is going to last very long, because ChatGPT is quickly able to write its own code and generate the best answers. And we are just scratching the surface now. 3 to 5 years from now, it's going to write code much better than any human coder can ever write code. So ultimately, I think the industry will need more leaders, more people who can communicate them, rather than people who can solve the best logical problems. So I think, so 2 things for people who wants to get into tech is that it's a great time to get into tech because you can leverage the power of ChatGPT, but also don't lose focus on your long-term game, which is communication and leadership skills are going to be much more important than ever before.
And I know you're talking about like tech in terms of like maybe the coding software side of things. Would you say that if you could expand it across all industry, is leadership skills one of the most important and always going to be super important?
It has always been important, but not important enough that not important than technical skills, but because ultimately until before ChatGPT, even until now, you still need someone to actually develop a software and make it usable. So the leadership comes in where you are trying to solve the right problem. Many times what happens in software companies or in tech is that we are having budget overruns and we are having all these delays in the project, mainly because when the business or the client needs a simple bike, we are trying to build a rocket. And so we had to, that's a very common thing, right? And so we had to, redo it multiple times to get it right. And that's primarily happening because the leaders who are placed in charge just doesn't know how to understand what the client needs at the deeper level. They don't know how to ask the right question that gets to the heart and soul of what business needs or the client's needs. And those are the skills that have been overlooked because we tend to focus on on the tech leaders to tend to be competent on their technical skills. So I think as everyone achieves the same levels of technical expertise through ChatGPT, these skills around being able to communicate effectively, being able to understand the business requirements accurately, that will become extremely important as and gives you a competitive edge over your other competitors by leveraging the help of ChatGPT.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying. It's a combination of knowing your technical skills, what resources are available, but then also ensuring that you're constantly reevaluating your people skills, as you
Yes,
call it, leadership skills, right? At the end of the day, of like, how do you communicate? How do you connect with people? How do you listen so you understand what they need, and then how can you share what you heard and provide their need in such a way that they can also grasp it. And we know it's like a teamwork effort instead of just a like, here's the project and let's just finish it off kind of thing.
exactly, Anand. That's accurately said.
Thank you. So one other thing before I wanted to ask you the final question is I think there has always been a bit of a disparity when it comes to men versus women in like the tech field. And I understand that there's more and more women now very interested in going to tech, or they're making a lot of cool changes, like in UX, or maybe in being a developer or being a product manager, things like that. So for different individuals, but I'm thinking mostly about women because sometimes coming from society, there's a lot of noise and messages of like, women can only do this, and they can't do that, whatever the case may be. I know men can also face some similar struggles and certain thought processes, as you were saying before, with one of the leaders you were coaching, who didn't really express himself very well in the beginning, but then as you coached him, he got a lot better, and it showed how much more valuable his effort going into learning more about himself and working on those skills can help the team. I'm wondering, for people who are a bit more insecure and working on their skill sets and trying to improve, I guess their worth, or they're just like starting off, or they're kind of maybe mid-senior, but they're still there. It just feels like in America there's competition everywhere, right? Like, how do you allow yourself to just focus on your route and not be so distracted by other people or things? Like, how do you confirm with yourself that you can get better, you can grow, even though there's so many more people who are better than you?
Yeah, great question. That's something I always struggle with, even today, right? I always want to jump onto the new things. So I often get caught up in the rat race of more and more without having the goal. And that's a challenge we all face. And that's why I also work with my own coach as well. Right? So the first thing is it starts with noticing the patterns. It's easy for me to tell, don't do this, or I think that's not a good idea. You have to stay focused on one thing. We all know that. Right? I don't have to tell people that. But it's about just reflecting, saying that, is this working for me? Is this a pattern? How long have I been doing this? For me, I tend to jump from idea to other, and that's been a pattern. The challenges I have, before being exposed to coaching, I was never aware of it. Right? So that's why I kept jumping from ideas to ideas, thinking this is the right path, but it's just having awareness of what is my pattern. Is this helping me out? Is this serving me? If it is not serving me, let me try something different, even though I am tempted to get onto this new idea or new rat race. Let me stop doing this new rat race. I'm already in a rat race number one. Let me finish that rat race number one. So just making a conscious decision to do that, and so self-awareness and making a conscious decision is what I would do for myself. And
Right. So it's like setting your goals, your priorities, asking yourself what you truly want, and then finishing something that you started instead of trying to look at everyone else and whatever is happening and try and do everything. Because I know in other episodes I've talked about burnout, because then that's gonna really make you feel that wear and tear trying to, wake up at night like, how else can I be better than the person? But at the end of the day, it's like, everyone's going through their own journey. So it's very hard to say. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate all your thoughts and your advice and suggestions. One thing I want to ask you is who or what inspires you?
great question. Who or what inspires me? I think I feel I'm in a natural flow state when I know my conversations are impacting others, whether that is on a one-on-one coaching call with client where they're discovering some insights, new way of looking at things, new action items they're making. That is a time when I feel inspired. The same thing when I'm on stage, when I'm able to deliver insights that people are like, oh, I never thought about that. Oh, this is applicable to me. And they're asking thoughtful questions. I think those are the times when that inspire me personally. And so I created a life which is in line with who I am. Even when I'm doing some tech consulting projects, it's the same thing. How impactful is this project to the client that I'm serving? So those are the things that inspire me. And as far as the people, I have a lot of heroes in my life. Um, you know, early in my childhood, it was my uncle. Right now, it's the many speakers that I look up to who are doing some amazing things, transforming other people's lives. So those are, and some of my mentors who are doing the things that I have always dreamed of doing, impacting many people's lives at scale. Those are the people who continue to inspire me as of today.
That's beautiful. Yeah, you have a lot of inspiration, and thank you for being inspiration for us today. And where will people be able to find you?
LinkedIn is one of the platforms I'm most active on. Send me a connection request, and I would love to have a conversation, answer any questions that you might have. So
Beautiful. So don't forget to reach out to Aditya if you ever want to chat with him or learn more about technology, the industry itself, coaching. And one last thought, do you have anything that you'd like to share before we hop off?
thank you for this opportunity to do this call, Anand. I really enjoyed the thorough, thoughtful questions that you asked that helped me go a little deeper than having a surface level conversation. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for being on our show. So thank you everyone for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.